Lab 1 is basically a introduction to how to use the simulator tool and also a review from lots of what we did in 220. So this is a simulator tool we'll be using a lot this semester. We use it because it allows us to do a lot of things that we just don't have enough equipment to actually do. So this is a tool we use. I'll let you know where you can find it to do stuff. We can grab these devices down here and drag them up into the white space. Right, I just grabbed a 2811 router. Why did I pick a 2811? Well, that's what we have in the lab, so I like to use what we have in the lab just for fun. Down here, all the different device types and other things you might need. Once you select a different type, it shows you what's available. So here are the routers, switches, 2960 I normally use because that's what we have in the lab. Hubs we won't use, wireless we won't use, connections we'll use that in a little while. End devices, this is a generic PC, this is a generic laptop, this is a server. Those are the three we'll be using most of the time. If I say grab a PC, grab whatever you want, a PC or a laptop. It doesn't matter, they operate the same. WAN emulation, we'll use that for one lab later on in the semester. We're not going to use custom-made devices or multi-user connections, I don't think. So once you drag something onto the white space, you can mouse over and you can't see what's coming up because that's popping off up over where I'm not recording. So test that out when you use the tool. But if you mouse over, some stuff pops up. What it shows is the port, whether it's up and down, the VLAN ID, the IP address, IPv6 address, and the MAC address. We're not worried too much about that right now. Double click on it. I'll drag it over here where you can see it. Double click on it and you get this window with three tabs. This first window is a physical view of the device. As you can see at this point, there are no modules in it. It has the two fast Ethernet interfaces. So if you're just doing something in these two fast Ethernet interfaces, you don't need to do anything with this tab. The config tab is like a GUI where you can change settings. I highly recommend you don't use the GUI to change settings because the real routers don't have GUIs to change settings like this. And then there's a CLI that looks just like the CLI you're used to seeing on the router. So once you get in here, you can type enable, and then you can start setting the different parameters that need to be set to configure the router. We're not going to do that yet. We're going to go back to the physical tab. In the lab, I told you to add a fiber interface. The lab says add a copper and one fiber. Well, there's already copper, so we just need to find fiber. So you can click on the different modules and it'll tell you what each module is. So this says, single Ethernet. We don't want that. Single Ethernet. No, thank you. One fast Ethernet for use with fiber media. Okay, so that's what I said to get fiber. So we'll use this one. So what you do is you grab it and drag it over, and that makes it active. And you drag it into the slot it fits in. So these guys won't fit into this tiny slot because see the little it won't fit there thing that keeps popping up, the circle with a line through it. It'll fit into this slot. We let go of it there, and it says, oh wait, you cannot add a module when the power is on. So we need to turn the power off. And now we'll try it again. Bam, now we have our fiber module. And now we'll turn the power back on. So now if you look over here, our router's booting. So what you see when the router boots, our router's booting. When it finishes, it'll be up. So now that I have my module in there, I want to copy this router. Copy this router, so you can go edit, copy, paste. I'm going to drag it over here. We're going to call this router 1. Router 1. Alright, so now I have two routers. The lab sheet said to add two switches, one for each router, so I'll go ahead and drag some switches up there. And then the lab sheet says add two PCs, one for each switch. Alright, so switches, similar to the routers, you click on it, you get this view with the three tabs. Here's where we will get our command line access to make our changes to our switches or run our commands to monitor them. PCs, a couple different things to look at. One, there's some different modules and stuff you can add. We're not going to be adding modules most of the time. There's a window here where you can configure your your settings, some of your settings. And then there's this window here where you can configure your settings. I recommend you configure your IP address settings here. You know, because that just makes it easier to remember what you're doing. You know, that could be your settings. I'm not going to save that right now because I just want to show you how to do that. Ping, our command prompt, when we get everything configured, we're going to run our pings from here. It's not going to work because there's nothing connected to it yet. So that's how we're going to test our connectivity most of the time. Later on in the semester, we're going to set up some access lists and use a browser to test those. So here you'll put in a IP address or a name to test that. So that's a quick overview of adding the devices and how to configure them. For the connections, we'll go to this connections tab. This lightning bolt will automatically choose your connections. So you just pretty much go over here and click on the device you want to connect to, and then click to the other device you want to connect to, and it decides things for you. We don't want to do that most of the time. When you add something you don't want, you hit this little X and go over and exit on top of it. Click on top of it and it'll go away. We want to pick the type of cable we need to use so that we can think a little bit. So PC to switch and switch to router, we need a straight through cable, copper straight through. When you are doing your own cable, you click on the device, it asks you where you want to connect it. We want to connect it to fast Ethernet, and then on the switch we're connected to 0-1. Right, same thing with the PC1. And then the same thing with the router. We'll connect 00 to port 24 for fun. Why do I think that's fun? I don't really know. I'm weird, I guess. So we got all these connected. Again. And then we want fiber between our two routers, so we have to find fiber. We'll go 0-1, 1-0 to 1-0. So, if you are perceptive, you'll notice that these lights are green, these are orange, and these are red. These are green because switch ports are automatically active and PC ports are automatically active. So, the link is up. They have connectivity between these two devices. Do they have layer 3 connectivity? No, because neither one of these devices have IP addresses assigned yet. These were orange over here because they were going through the spanning tree process, which we'll learn about in a few weeks, where the switch was blocking frames on those interfaces for a short period of time to make sure that there were no layer 2 loops introduced by connecting that device. So that's why they're orange. Now they're green. These are red because, anybody remember why? Because router interfaces are shut down by default. So we have to do a no shutdown on the router to get the interfaces to come up. So once we configure the routers, then these guys will be active. So next step will be to design an IP scheme and apply these settings to the routers as designated in the lab sheet.